locations, the design, the materials used, all the way down to the latest details, are few of many things that we focused on when we envisioned the airport residency. As proud innovators of community estates, the airport residency in Old Yundum, a project by Swami India International, offers unique gated community with 3 and 4 bedroom villas and duplexes. Just 5 minutes away from the Banjul International Airport. Luxury, convenience, and accessibility are some of the reasons you should consider this great housing opportunity. With a clubhouse, a playground, access roads, and parking facilities available for your dream home or a valuable investment, you will find all you need at Airport Residency here in Old Yundum.
Receive your money transfer at any of our branches across the country with ease, including our new branches in Bajakunda, Jareng, Same, and Sandu Dar Salame. No queues, no hassle. With Easy Financial Services, get more for your money. You can also send money anywhere in the world with Easy Financial Services. We also do foreign currency exchange, bank deposit, EcoBank Express Point, bill payments, and many more. For more information, contact us on +220 700 0819 or visit our website at www.easyfinancials.gm.
The 2021 race to the State House is revving up. Over 15 political parties, all vying for the presidency. The Fatu Network presents Know Your Candidates 2021. A weekly show where we profile political candidates, delve into their manifestos, and more.
Know Your Candidates 2021 with Sergio Brito.
Alhaji Mamadi Kurang was born in Nyamina Kudang Central River region in December 1970. Born to farming parents, Kurang enrolled at the Kudang Primary School until 1982. He attended St. Mary's Primary School in Banjul, where he sat his common entrance, and then proceeded to St. Augustine High School, where he graduated in September of 1984. In June 1989, Kurang sat to the WAEC GCE O levels and came on top of the school with an aggregate 9, emerging amongst the top 3 in the Gambia. His performance in the WAEC examinations will earn young Kurang a WAEC Regional Award for Excellence. In 1991, Alhaji Kurang earned himself a 4-year Commonwealth Scholarship with Malaysian Technical Corporation Scholarship to the International Islamic University in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, resulting in a Bachelor's Honours degree in Economics in 1996. Whilst on his degree, Kurang enrolled with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, commonly known as ACCA. He successfully completed the final exams of the ACCA and graduated in 1999 while working with a local Gambian bank. He also sat for the Advanced Diploma in Information Systems of Association of Business Executives exam and won an award for coming out first position in the world for the Information System Analysis paper. Kurang briefly worked for the national telecommunications provider Gamtel. He also taught briefly at St. Augustine's High School as an economics teacher and worked as an accountant for a construction company, and eventually moving to the Arab Gambian Islamic Bank as an investment analyst in 1997. He later served as head of audit and risk in the new bank. In 2010, Kurang set up his own training school, Jollof Tutors, which became a household name in the Gambia. The initiative contributed to a revolution in professional education that inspired more than 20,000 young Gambians in fields of finance, business administration, and technology. He has also worked for international organizations like USAID and ActionAid International. In 2017, he was sworn in as secretary to the Janneh Commission, a commission that was set up by the government of the Gambia to investigate the financial dealings of former President Yahya Jammeh. And now Kurang is amongst the over 15 Gambians vying for the presidency. And here's what he shared with us on Know Your Candidates 2021. Good morning, Mr. Kurang. And thank you very much for sitting down with us on Know Your Candidates 2021. One of the many political candidates throwing their hearts in the political ring, especially in this forthcoming December elections. Thank you very much for sitting down with us. First, let's begin with where you came from, Nyamina, Kurang. How do you reflect on your days growing up in Nyamina, the land of the educated, some would say?
Well, interesting, because I was born in Kurang, which is in the heart of Nyamina. And obviously, education has been there for since we call it pre-independence. There, Kurang had a primary school, so many people rise up from there to get educated. So when you're growing up, you get this feeling from your parents and your environment that education is the way, and you've got to have examples. You have examples that you can look at. Right. They always show you. We had several doctors, and we had people like Sheriff Sekuba, who was a politician and also a finance minister, governor. So you had references, you had role models. And growing up as a young kid, you get this feeling that, yeah, I got to be there, right. You know, and I think that's an inspiration. The farming is the culture over there, but you go to the farm at the end of the day, and your parents let you know that it's part of it. You farm, then you go to school, and you've got to make it.
Right. An opportunity that not many Gambians, especially living up country, had growing up. A seasoned educationist yourself, and now politics. What is Kurang's definition of leadership?
I think as an educationist, and then of course as a politician now, leadership for me, it's a very wide thing. But in summary, you could say that leadership is about making difference in the lives of people. So you could be a leader in any environment, in any circumstances, or in any kind of institution. What matters most is what difference do you make in the lives of the people that you have control over. So if you're a leader of a village, all right, or a leader of a company, it's not much different from when you are a leader of a country, right? It's about your people, the subjects of the country, the citizens, or the interests, the stakeholders. How can you make a difference in their lives, in the decisions that you take, and the things that you do as a leader? So that's how I see it.
Right.
Yeah.
And now, of course, you are into politics. What was the inspiration? What inspired you to say, I want to do this?
I think, of course, a number of circumstances. As a teacher, of course, for the past 20 years, I've been teaching, and I've been watching keenly and participating in the debates, in the national debates at different levels. So you have an awareness of what is happening around you. What got me into the race for 2021, obviously, we had a transition. You know, I have been very active in my opinions about what needs to be done, what is the way forward for the country, even before the transition, and then after the transition also. Right? It's the country at this moment in time, every Gambian noticed that it's a very critical period. Right? We've gone through a 5-year transition almost now, and we are going into another phase in which Gambians are going to make a reflection about what has transpired and what needs to be done. Right? I've been in teaching, you know, for the past 20 years to thousands and thousands of young people. When I sit around and say and ask myself, what next for me and what next for my country? Because I think that's what always inspired me. What got me into teaching is what for me and what for my people. So I realized as an accountant or an economist, I could have gone and do several jobs instead of choosing to teach. But I asked myself 20 years ago, what for me and what for my country? I said, well, to invest in the education of the young people of this country was what inspired me then. I had done that for 10 years, for 2 decades, 20 years now, for 2 decades, and now the question comes back to me again, right, at this moment in time. What for me and what for my country? So at this moment, I feel that the country needs people who have been consistent for the past 5 years and well before that to take this country to the next level. And I see myself as, having that experience and track record and inspiration to take this country to the next level. That inspired me to put myself forward.
I can
as
tell
a presidential
that
candidate.
education is in fact one of your priorities. What is the significance of education in national development and youth empowerment?
Very, very significant. All right. I invested 20 years of my life in educating young people of this country. And I have studied in Asia after my high school in the Gambia. I've been a student leader. When I got to Asia, I've been in student leadership activities. But when I observe, right, developments around the country, you look at different around the world, you look at different countries and how they move from least developed countries or from poor countries into rich countries, you have several examples. You've got Singapore, you've got Malaysia, you've got Indonesia.
Even
you've
countries like Taiwan.
Taiwan. Mm-hmm. So newly industrialized countries in Southeast Asia, they call them. Now you ask yourself a question, and when we were there, we kept on asking the people, what is the secret behind this rapid development where a generation or a country could move from a poor country to a developed country in one generation? Singapore got independence in 1965. And the answer still comes back to you.
Gambia.
Same answer comes, same as Gambia. So the answer keeps on coming back to you. The natural resource of the country is the number one key factor to move a country from a poor country to a developed country. We see in Africa, several countries have got gold, diamond, oil, and so many natural resources in abundance. But they have not been able to make the transformation from poor country to rich country within a generation. And we look at the Asian tigers, Rwanda, including, for example, and we see countries moving from poor to rich country in one generation. The key difference boils down to this, the human resource. And when you say the human resource, we're talking about the people, the population. But what difference? We all have people. Africa has got smart people, etc. But mass education, not a sprinkles of few educated individuals. Right. Mass education of a society, I believe, is the number one key factor that can move a country from a poor country to a rich country.
How would you describe the Kurang philosophy? What is your philosophy?
Well, I think my philosophy, good question. If I reflect on it, it's about what is in it for the disadvantage. Right? My philosophy is about poverty. How can we remove poverty? And my philosophy is, if I am to summarize it, I have this thing. You can change a country through people, but you can only change people through education. That is what has driven me for 2 decades. So I don't think my philosophy can be anything different from what has driven me for 2 decades. We need to change the country. But to change the country, we need to change the people. And to change the people, we need to change them through education. That's what I live for.
And now, getting into the issues, like you said, this country has been through a lot the past years. Our already struggling healthcare sector has been crippled by the coronavirus pandemic. What will you do to ensure that healthcare becomes a basic human right for every Gambian? And I'm talking about accessibility and affordability.
Yeah, I think when we do a manifesto under what we call Youth for Change manifesto to change this country by mobilizing young people, we had this, one of the key primary objectives of our policies is that primary education and primary health care need to be universal. Right. In the sense that if you look at Gambia, we grew up in the provincial areas, and I've been making so many tours recently, to the provinces and all along my life. The disparity is so high between, let's say, the haves and the have-nots in terms of access to healthcare. And primary healthcare is not something that you can choose. It needs to be universal, just like primary education. Everybody needs to know how to read and write. Everybody needs basic access to healthcare. A woman is pregnant and needs some attention, some antenatal care. There is no option to say, she's got the money or she hasn't got the money. The child has a right to survive, right? The unborn child has a right to survive. And that right to survive can only be, achieved if the mother is given, unlimited access to basic health care from our health centers. This is lacking, and I think this is primary.
And recently we have seen, even though some doctors will argue that the recent rise in maternal deaths are not actually accurate. It is just about the fact that they are putting it out there on social media. What do you make of this recent Gambia Women Lives Matter?
Yeah, I think this is very significant, because I think if I was to argue, instead of saying that it has been overestimated, I would say it is underestimated, because I believe that there's so many women out there that are having problems at childbirth that are not being reported, because for obvious reasons we know information in this country is still very limited about in terms of reporting, the accidents as well as the deaths that are happening, or the emergencies that are happening in very remote corners of this country. I can tell you, every government official who disputes that must be able to tell you now, at this moment of the rainy season in this country, there are so many areas of this country that no government is able to access in any form, much more doctors and nurses in any form, because of accessibility of roads. So how would you dispute that fact? Things are happening in those remote corners. I give you examples of places like in Sami, in Jalal, where you have about 5 kilometers or so. There are remote villages in the URR, in the CRR, in the LRR, in the North Bank Division, that people are not able to get access to this moment, and health emergencies are happening there that are possibly not being reported. I think instead of denying, the Women Lives Matters and the statistics that are being forward, the government must admit, right? I think admission is the first step towards addressing the issue. To admit that we have a health emergency in this country that has been possibly increased by the presence of the coronavirus, and then obviously the strain that is put on the medical facilities. I think it's for the government to admit this to the people and to come up with clear policies of how to address this.
Right. Which now brings me to the civil service, because a lot of people say that one of Gambia's biggest problems is the civil service. Right. They think it is in fact overly inefficient. What will a Kurang administration do to ensure that government employees provide the best of services to their customers, the Gambian people?
Yeah, I think it's a serious concern, because services is really very, very poor and inefficient generally in the country, and particularly for the civil service, because we know there are a number of factors that are responsible for the efficiency of the civil service. One, we said in accounting, we said control is a management problem. So you might be a civil servant, but you are answerable to somebody. There is an authority. There is the Public Service Commission, there are the departmental heads, there is also the cabinet, etc. So we say control is a management problem. There is a control problem in the civil service that has got to do with the government of the day that is in place. Right? And then we also say control is also an issue of attitude. So the attitude of the government about how things should run, how efficiently things should run, will eventually boil down to the lowest level of the civil service. Training is also a factor. The fact that maybe lots of people in the civil service might be, or number of people in the civil service might be described as square pegs in round holes, right? Simply because maybe the training is lacking that is needed to be able to let them perform to the best level of their activity. This is also an issue. Recruitment, obviously, is also a factor. So I would say our administration for change, what we are asking for, obviously has to be a very massive shake-up of the civil service. Not in terms of particular victimization of any individual or any group of individuals, but with sound policies that are based on what we clearly singled out in our manifesto, called a meritocratic system, to make sure that jobs go to people who deserve them, to make sure that the people who get these jobs get the right kind of training to be able to perform what they need to do.
Which takes us back to education.
Which takes us back to education. So, an uneducated civil service cannot be expected to perform. You look at the job market. I've worked in a bank before. And I will tell you, most of the young people, when they graduate and they're coming up to join the job market, either in university or from high school, they usually look up to the private sector first.
Right.
So in so many countries around Asia, they're telling us, don't blame the civil servants completely. Because a civil service needs to be also attractive to get the right kind of people. The salaries, the allowances, the working conditions must be as good as people working in the bank, because the banks are giving service and they want the best of the people to deliver that service. So our civil service in our government must also be able to make the civil service attractive in terms of salaries, emoluments, in terms of working conditions, in terms of prospects, to be able to attract the best of Gambians and to be able to make sure that the people who are already in the civil service are motivated to perform services. In Singapore, for example, they tell you government civil servants should be paid on average as people in the private sector. And this makes logic, because we know, we simply say in management, how you treat your workers is actually how they treat people.
Right.
So people you go for an immigration, you go for your passport, or you go for your birth certificate, or you go to the hospital to get service, and there is that sense of carefree attitude. But the same nurse, right, or the same clerk in the government office, when he closes, for example, and go to a private clinic, now portrays a completely different attitude
right,
towards the customer. Right. So you've got to ask yourself, what is the problem? This is the same personality behaving differently in two different circumstances.
Right.
The same Gambian who behaves one way when he works at the government PMO, for example, or in a particular ministry, behaves differently when he is employed by the Standard Chartered Bank as a clerk. So
something worth wondering.
Something fundamental needs to be looked at. And that's why we said that control is a question of management attitude, is a question of management responsibility. In this case, it is about the government in power.
Right. And now we look at the economic outlook of this country. It is not looking good.
Yeah.
The debt to GDP ratio, it's definitely through the roof. It is extremely, extremely high, even higher than the previous governments, some will say.
Sure.
Despite what they try to tell us on paper sometimes, because we have all these institutions like the IMF telling us that, the economy of the country is looking good and this and this and that.
Yeah.
What will you do to reverse these numbers?
Yeah, serious concern, because the debt situation at the moment is very alarming. The government never likes to emphasize, the seriousness of the debt problem, because the government operates and survives on this debt problem that we have. Government spends, and when they spend to an extent that spending becomes irresponsible, that extra spending has to be paid for, right? Then there are budget deficits. The budget deficits, money is now borrowed both locally and externally to pay for the deficit. So deficit financing is what increases the debt, with the accumulating interest that is attached to it. The history of this country, for the past 50 years, the Jawara government and the Jammeh government together borrowed for 50 years $1 billion. Now it is becoming even a more serious problem, because what we see, the debt now, according to statistics, is about $1.5 to $1.6 billion. So what is happening? It means that the current Barrow government is on its way, within a decade or less than a decade, to borrow close to what has been borrowed in 50 years by the Jawara and the Jammeh government. Now, what is the implication of this? When they keep on borrowing and borrowing, they have to pay it with interest. Right. Money that is there to be borrowed is in limited quantity. The government now has to compete with the private sector to borrow. Interest rates, which is the cost of borrowing, will go up. When the cost of borrowing goes up, it affects the businesses and it affects investment in the country. What happens is that if government wants to borrow through the central bank, it becomes a priority of lenders, the banks and the public and the external lenders, to lend to the government instead of an individual private person. So economists say there is a crowding out effect in the sense that the private investor is not able to borrow money. Even if he borrows money, he borrows it at a very high expensive rate. That affects investment in the country. When investment goes down, employment goes down. So we see in the Gambia, jobs are not created because factories cannot borrow and create jobs. Private investors cannot borrow and create jobs. And then we are just piling on more debt. So our government, in order to reduce government borrowing, you must first take care of one of the key fundamental factors, which is discretionary government expenditure. Government has got series of expenditures. Some are necessary and some are simply left to the discretion of the government of the day. According to their whims and fancies, they can spend on cars instead of spending on hospitals, which will increase productivity. They can spend on per diems, fuel and petrol in abundance, instead of spending and investing on education, which is going to make our country more productive, right, and then create more jobs. But our government is saying that we are going to prioritize investment on education, investment on the productive sectors like agriculture, investment on the health facility, so that Gambia becomes more productive. And that productivity will instead increase more revenue for the country, will reduce discretionary expenditure, will make the budget deficit go down, will reduce government expenditure, will encourage private investment in the country. And that is going to reduce the debt burden. This is the only formula to reduce debt burden. Anything else, spending and boasting about roads, I'm sorry, it's just going to bring more debts for this country.
And now, what is an interview with Mr. Kurang without talking about your time with the Janneh Commission? We already know this was a commission that was established by the government of the Gambia in 2017 to look into the financial dealings of former President Yahya Jammeh.
So,
looking back, how do you reflect on your days working on the commission?
Yeah, I think my days at the Janneh Commission, very memorable. I think it was an opportunity for me to do something special for my country. In terms of delivering justice, the Janneh Commission was part of the greater transitional justice that was promised by the coalition government to the Gambian people, and that transitional justice came in stages. Right, there had to be a financial aspect of it, which the Janneh Commission was supposed to focus on, and also an institutional reform that was needed, where some of the things that were supposed to be highlighted by the Janneh Commission for the government to take action. There were other aspects of the transition, like the new constitution, a new referendum, the TRRC, reparations taking place within a time limit, security sector, and you just talk about the civil service. In the case of the Janneh Commission, I was very proud to be there as a secretary. I think I was brought in because of my experience in setting up systems, which I did, and then obviously being behind the scenes and in terms of administration and putting things together. Right. On reflection at the moment, I think it could have been much a better story than now, because Gambians were anticipating that they have seen so much on TV in terms of money that has been lost through the 22 years of the APRC government. People were hoping that some of this money is going to be recovered in a massive style or quantities and then be reinvested back into the economy. Unfortunately, this did not happen. As an insider, obviously, there are problems from the beginning. I could say maybe people will divide this into two problems. The first problem was, did the Janneh Commission, right, as a commission, execute its responsibilities in a way that would have been maximized the opportunities for the government? I think they may have tried, but obviously there were issues which obviously have been discussed around. There are conflict of interest issues, there are coverage issues, and when those things enter into a commission, you could not achieve what you would have achieved. Now, those variables remaining constant, for example, there is still another aspect of it. A recommendation has been done by the commission. Why was the recommendation not implemented the way it was submitted to the government? Right. So I think in the Janneh Commission we have lost great opportunities to recover assets. Key opportunities also was, why was the government not taking action when so much information has already been available in terms of people who were implicated in those investigations? Why was timely action not taken? I think on the whole, looking at the money that has been invested in accounting, we say both the implicit and the explicit costs. The Janneh Commission might have cost the Gambian taxpayer, physically in terms of almost $500 million, and then opportunity-wise, billions, obviously, that we could have recovered, and we have not yet recovered that. So I think for a new government, the Journey Commission is still an issue, because we always say, right, if you're going to be a new government, it's not just about what proposals are you proposing. I think it's also a question of where the transition stop. What steps are you going to take as a new leadership, in terms of implementing some of the unfinished businesses? Right. No government of the future can completely ignore that. The Journey Commission, the Constitutional Review Commission, the TRRC, the security sector reform, and the civil service reform. Nobody can promise to be a good president in the future without talking and then addressing these unfinished businesses.
Everything was good, and then came the fallout.
Yeah.
After you wrote a 7-page damning petition, of course. Why was it important for you to come out with that information? Because this is Gambia. A lot of people will rather just hush up and enjoy the little millions and then keep it going. Why was it significant for you to come out?
Yeah, I think obviously in Gambia it's very important. There are no jobs in the Gambia actually apart from the contracts, or for us independents, there are no contracts apart from what the government gives, very little. So everybody, when you get an opportunity, I have never worked with the government. This was an opportunity on a contract for me to perform something for my country, and also, earn a small living along the way. But I think the issue was bigger than earning a living. The commission salary was good in terms of what they could pay you at that moment. I know that maybe some people are paid $500,000, no problem. I was paid maybe 100,000. It's still big money in the Gambia. Right. So it's very difficult, you're right, in terms of being independent, knowing the consequences in this country, that when you speak up, you are always threatened with your survival. That's been a Gambian phenomenon for a long time. So I had observed as an independent person, I've taken an oath, and my allegiance was to the Constitution, to the people of the country, and not to any individual or any government of the day. At that moment, obviously, it was a difficult thing for me to make a decision, to express my opinion, to be heard at the level which I felt should be heard. And I was not expecting a pat on the back, right? And obviously it came out to be that way. I lost the contract, and I was asked by the president to leave. But then at the end of the day, I have no regrets over it, because I think it was significant for the country, and people have come to see that the commission was an opportunity for us to recover billions. And it didn't come to materialize. So I was hoping that the Attorney General's office at that moment in time would listen to the voice of reasonableness, but that was not the case.
Which brings me to my next question, because in a situation like this, you would expect that the government of the day will in fact try to have some sort of investigations into the matter and, come out with a report and tell the Gambian people what exactly happened. Is it true or is it not true? I remember the then Justice Minister coming out to say that the allegations are in fact unsubstantiated, and that you went beyond the confines of your, of your administrative authority. What did you think when you heard him say that?
Yeah, I was completely disappointed, because not surprised though, because the Justice Minister had called me to his office, and I did tell him he appreciated what I have done, my time in the commission, the sacrifice I have done, and there was no doubt about that. And obviously we both know I didn't break any law or any rule. I had the right to express my opinion, but disappointed in the sense that I think at the end of the day, as a Justice Minister, or even as a President, you have to take an oath, and your oath is about your allegiance to the people, and every decision that you make should be in terms of the best interest of the people. But this is the disappointment of every Gambian with this transition process, all the way from A to Z. That decisions are taken right either at the cabinet level or so that do not reflect necessarily the interests of the people. Instead, they reflect the interests of individuals and the interests of parties. Right? I think that there was political interest at that moment in me giving way to the situation, because I refuse, obviously, to be swayed by any political interest in terms of the decisions and what I do at that moment. Obviously, we know that it has been a storm, right, an up and down storm in the political activity of this country. We had Barrow, who had been an independent candidate when he contested. Obviously, he had come from another party, right? And then obviously along the way, he had fallen out, formed his own party. At the time of my dismissal, right, I think President Barrow was still, by and large, a UDP, you know. So I think political interest, you know, has taken over the interests of the country, you know, throughout these 5 years. And some of us, obviously, when we refuse to be politically aligned, of course, we become victims. But my principle is that it is the country first, and everything else second.
So what does this say about our track record when it comes to accountability? Because we have seen people who have been caught on tape soliciting bribes, and at the end of the day, nothing happens. What does this say? Yeah,
I think accountability and fighting for corruption is more a matter of political will. Mm-hmm. You know, if the leadership of the day do not have the will, right, to implement the social contract, which requires them to take people to account in terms of corruption, particularly when there is evidence for that corruption, and there is no will to do this, obviously it tells us that there is a big problem in the country. Mm-hmm. Because what the politicians have been able to do, the coalition, you know, both the existing government as well as some of the parties that were part of the coalition, what they have been making us to believe in the Gambia is that just listen to us, right, and don't ask us any questions. And we, the Gambians, are saying no to that. We want to ask you questions, because when it was 3 years, right, first we said 3 years, and they were all like, okay, 3 years, and we were telling them, oh, 5, the Constitution said 5 years, they were saying, and we were like, look, but listen, we have a deal, and a deal is a deal. I remember writing in one of my posts, a deal is a deal, and I had so many people pouncing on me, you know, telling me all sorts of things. I said, but it's a gentleman agreement. A deal is a deal, and we all know it was in the interest of the country. You will not be able to fight corruption. So the people generally of this country do not have faith in the existing government, and they do not have faith in a lot of political parties or individuals that are putting themselves for political office simply because they had the opportunity to show the people that they stand against corruption. They stand against putting the country first before political interest or personal interest. And they have failed that test. So they're coming back to the people and asking for votes. And that's why we are in the race, because we are saying that wasn't the deal. Right? Some of them are asking, why don't you join us? We said, no, we can't join you because we've already seen you.
Right. Yeah. So in a political field as murky and crowded as ours, do you believe you stand a chance?
Oh, yes. I believe I stand a chance. You know, I've been going around the country for the past 1 year, and basically I've been in this country throughout the past 20 years. I haven't gone anywhere. I know the society. I know what is happening on the ground. I've been going around throughout when we started this political race, talking from people from one community to another community. Like I said, the race, you know, some of the players, the key players in the race now are trying to, how do they call it? If you cannot convince them, confuse them. So there has been this attempts to confuse the population with pictures, with mass rallies. I don't think Gambians are falling for this. I think a million Gambians, a silent majority of the people are watching, and they know who is who. Like the famous quote of the president, you understand? So more than your sutel, people are watching, and people are listening very well. And people haven't got such a short memory to know what happened. People know that 5 years of this transition has been compromised. So when I go talking to people, and the same president came back and said, well, you know, you can own your party, but you don't own the people, isn't it? Yeah. So people are feeling free for the first time in a democratic election in this country. People are waiting, listening to different political agendas. And then I believe that the majority of the Gambians will make their decision, not based on any emotion or sentimental reasons, but simply based on the fact that they have seen somebody who can take this country forward. Not only that, but people who have been consistent with the message that we deliver to the people for the past year and for the past decades.
Thank you very much for sitting down with us, Mr. Kurang. That was a very interesting interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The 2021 race to the State House is revving up. Over 15 political parties all vying for the presidency, the FATU Network presents Know Your Candidates 2021. A weekly show where we profile political candidates, delve into their manifestos, and more.
Know Your Candidates 2021 with Sergio Brito.
Receive your money transfer at any of our branches across the country with ease, including our new branches in Bajakunda, Jareng, Same, and Sandu Dar Salame. No long queues, no hassle. With Easy Financial Services, get more for your money. You can also send money anywhere in the world with Easy Financial Services. We also do foreign currency exchange, bank deposit, EcoBank Express Point, bill payments, and many more. For more information, contact us on +220 700 0819 or visit our website at www.easyfinancial.gm.
The locations, the design, the materials used, all the way down to the latest details, are few of many things that we focused on when we envisioned the airport residency. As proud innovators of community estates, the airport residency in Old Yundum, a project by Swami India International, offers unique gated community with 3 and 4 bedroom villas and duplexes. Just 5 minutes away from the Banjul International Airport. Luxury, convenience, and accessibility are some of the reasons you should consider this great housing opportunity. With a clubhouse, a playground, access roads, and parking facilities available for your dream home or a valuable investment, you will find all you need at Airport Residency here in Old Yundum.